Hello and welcome to the Pastor's Perspective program. Brian Perez here. And by the way, today's program is not live. We are pre-recorded, so do not call in with your questions. Save those for tomorrow when the program will be live. That being said, we are recording this program on Thursday, a few days before Monday, and so we've got lots of calls on the board ready to be answered. And answering your questions today will be Brian Broderson, the senior pastor of Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa in Southern California. You also hear him on the Back to Basics radio program on many of these stations. And Bobby Conway is here as well. He's the author and apologist from the 1 Minute Apologist channel on YouTube. He's all over YouTube there as well. And he's the pastor of Image Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. How you doing, guys? Ready to answer some calls?
Yep, doing great.
You bet.
We're ready to go. I heard one time that Bobby was actually Mr. YouTube. That was
he owns YouTube.
His moniker. Yeah, I think Rick Warren said that.
Right.
You know, once.
Yeah.
Is it still true?
Well, we know that. Yeah, right. I wish I did. We would be quite loaded if we owned YouTube, right? Like
and you wouldn't be canceling so many voices either.
Not at all. Not at all.
Hey, how's the 1 Minute Apologist going?
It's going. I feel like it's going good. It's going as it's been going for the last couple of years, actually.
Yeah.
We don't put a lot of attention into it. It could do a lot better. But now with me starting a church, I'm working on a book.
Yeah.
So these types of things cause me, but I streamline all that in there and I just try to help it go. But we experience moderate growth. It's not like there's some YouTubers that'll just blow you away that are my friends. I mean, they'll post something and 3-4 days later, they'll have 400,000 hits.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. Like 8 stadiums full of people.
Yeah.
And,
that happens to me every time I post anything on YouTube. It's just insane. It just blows up. I don't know how.
It just blows up. Yeah. So that's my way of saying I'm definitely not Mr. YouTube for sure, but I love what we've been able to do there.
Hey, Bobby, I didn't get to tell you this, but you know who I met and had a really great time with in the UK was Amy Orr Ewing.
Really?
Yes.
She is a fabulous gal. And what
absolutely.
What an
apologist.
Yeah, I mean, she's an apologist, she's a theologian, and her husband. Now, listen to this. Her husband's name is Frog. Frog Orr Ewing.
Ribbit
yes.
Frog?
Ribbit Frog. And I said, okay, listen, we got to talk about this because I know English people do weird things. Did your parents actually name you Frog?
And why?
Well, they didn't, but it was tagged onto him at a very young age, and it was Froglet. But he did get to an age in life where he said, look, no longer call me Froglet. I am now Frog. And this guy was amazing. He was so much fun. We had a blast. We just had the greatest time. Sam Albury was with us, and Sam's great too. And, he's the author of a number of fantastic books on sexuality. And so we all went out for a great curry and we just had a load of laughs. It was so much fun. But
oh, that's great.
Yeah. But have you met her, Bobby, Amy?
I don't know if I've met her. I've definitely heard her on Unbelievable. I feel like I might have met her at a conference along the way.
Yeah.
But what I will say is I have recently developed an appetite for Thai yellow curry. I've never liked curry, and I'm really enjoying Thai yellow curry. So I know when I come back to California, you have been telling about this Thai place. Do they have good yellow curry?
They do, but they have really good red curry.
Okay, I've not tried it.
The Penang curry. Oh my gosh, it is so good. Yeah, I was down there. I was down in Balboa today, and I walked right by. It's called Mint Leaf, and that will be our next destination when you come back. Yeah.
Wasn't that a song? Tie a yellow curry around the old oak tree back in the 70s? Or am I thinking of something else?
No, I think you're right. I think it was.
Oh, no, it's yellow ribbon. Yellow ribbon, not yellow curry. That's not it.
Okay.
All right, so we're not live today. By the way, we got to get that Mr. Orr Ewing on the program here, because I would love to introduce. Today we have Pastor Frog in the studio with us. I mean, that would just be awesome.
Right,
Yeah, what a guy. I mean, he was just a tremendous guy. Yeah, it's great. He's a vicar in the Church of England. I think he might be, I don't know, something even above the average pastor. But yeah, it was all good.
Very cool. All right, so last Thursday on the program, we, for some reason, had a lot of questions about the end times and COVID, and looks like those are continuing on the program today, so we'll get to those. But first, let's get to the non-COVID questions. We'll start with Jackie calling in from California. Hi there, Jackie. Welcome. How can we help you?
Hi. I was just calling because my husband had asked me, he had read, it says, why does it say not to babble and not to pray the same prayer? And I guess he's never heard that before. And he said something about, it says on that passage as well, I can't remember right now, but not your Father already knows what you need before you even ask. So he said, so then why are we praying if praying, if he's saying not to pray the same thing because he already knows what we need.
Okay,
and
Bob.
I didn't know how to answer him.
Yeah, let's see what Bobby says about this first. Go ahead, Bobby.
I think part of the problem is with religious leaders where they're being addressed for trying to look spiritual by their babbling. And so I don't think that there's anything wrong with repetitious prayer as long as our heart's in it. And so, yes, it is true that the Father knows what we have before we even ask. But if that's the case, if you take that kind of fatalistically, he also knows what we need without us even asking. So we don't have to ask once, we don't have to ask twice, 3 times. He just knows. And so I don't think there's a problem with praying in a repetitious manner, but I do think it's important that we keep our heart in it. And, I can fall into that sometimes where my heart just loses sight of my repetitious prayers because there's some things I just like to pray consistently for. These can be your family. It could be meals. And sometimes I just have to realize, even in my own life, I'm going, I'm not a Pharisee, but, my heart's really not in it. And I've got these... what can happen in our life is we can get really good with our habits. And when we get really good with our habits, we can have a heart to want to have good habits, but then somewhere along the way, we have habits and we lose our heart. And I would say as long as the habit and the heart are going together, then it's a wonderful thing to pray about these things that we're burdened about consistently. Now, I will say, I think we should be looking to expand in our prayer life. Like I can tell that in my own prayer life, that when I'm praying the same rote prayer every day, and I'm not having fresh breakthroughs, I'm not really stopping to think about other things that I need to pray about, I can tell that I'm being a little bit ritualistic. I'm kind of showing up and I'm going through these emotions. And I think God does desire for us to be connected to his heart. And not only that, prayer should not be just asking for things. It should genuinely be pondering on the verses that we read, celebrating how great God is, reflecting on our individual sins for the day. So there's ample material to pray, but it's really easy to get ritualistic. And so I'm sad to say that I even find in my own life that sometimes I think God would say, Bobby, quit babbling. Just clean this up a little bit. Come after me with your heart.
Babbling Bobby. Jackie, what do you think of what Babbling Bobby just said?
I think that was awesome.
Okay.
That was a really good answer, and I appreciate it. And
Sure.
that does make sense. Like we could just say the same thing, but like you said, if your heart's not in it, it's just kind of like you're kind of going through the motions.
Yeah. Brian, do you want to add anything?
Having that connection makes sense.
No, that was fantastic. There's nothing to add.
Jackie, thanks for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective.
Babbling Bobby.
Babbling Bobby. That's his new name. He's got a new name here. Babbling Bobby. You gave yourself this name.
Hey, that's okay.
The venerable Brian Broderson and the babbling Bobby Conway. That just doesn't fit. It just,
This babbling teammate.
yes. It's not going to work. All right, let's stay in California for the next call. Agosa wants to know how a Christian man can find a Christian woman who loves God the same way he loves God. Right,
Hi,
Agosa?
pastors. Yes. Hi, pastors.
Hi, Agosa.
So how can Agosa find a Christian woman who loves God just as much as he does? Brian, what would you tell him?
Well, I don't know about finding a Christian woman. I think a better way to go about things is to seek the Lord. Paul said this. He said, "Are you loosed from a wife? Do not seek a wife." And I don't think Paul meant that you can't, if you have a longing to be married, that you shouldn't pursue that. What I think Paul is doing is he's setting the priorities right. Seek the Lord, and the Lord, as you seek him and his will lead you into that place and into a connection with that person that he would have you to be married to. I think when you go out and seek a wife, especially as a guy, it can be really creepy for girls. You go to church and, and every time you see a girl, you wonder if she's married or not married.
She
you
the
start
one.
asking her inappropriate questions. And man, it's just like they get creeped out really quick. So do not do that. We do not let men do that at our church. So I think, seek the Lord, and God knows who you need. If he's calling you to be in a marital relationship, he knows the person that is going to be compatible with you, and he's going to bring about circumstances that are going to lead to those kinds of relationships. So,
Bobby, anything to add to what Pastor Brian just said?
Those were some really insightful words. It's true, because we don't want to scare a lady off in our desperation. And we know that Agosa, we're not saying that, but I do think for the wider audience to listen to, I think that's always good advice, that we don't come on too strong. I would say, like, if I was single, I would think some of the obvious things would be, I would want to be in a context of a good church, but I wouldn't want to try to find a church on that basis alone. I think that could become the danger. But I do think, being around some Christian community, being aware of some of the ministries that maybe local churches offer can be a good opportunity. When some of the Christian mingle and some of that first came out, it all seemed really bizarre to me. But the funny thing is now through these filters, it sounds like some people have actually been able to weed out some of these bad relationships. So I'm not as skeptical of it as I once was. I guess I could imagine if I was single, I might go on and, well, let me check out what looks good here, do I want to make sure that because you could save yourself a lot of time, right? Like, this person's owning, I'm a Christian, I love to read, I like fun.
But are they being
so
honest? That's the other thing to keep in mind, because they might be saying, I love to read, and they really don't. I love dogs. They really don't.
Yeah, they could be, but that's kind of silly too, though, because it's like, then you're going to get matched with somebody that's not compatible. So, like, if I didn't like something, I'd say I don't like it. Like, I'm looking for somebody. But then again, this could be dangerous too, because it's like, are we trying to create this techno compatibility? And I think about my wife and I, we've had more combat ability than compatibility at times in our life. And that at times has made us crazy, but I'm so thankful for her, because the Lord brought us together. And, I love how Heather and I bumped into each other. I think he providentially brought us together. And because of that belief, that's allowed me and her to stay so committed. Even when times got tough, we really believe that the Lord brought us together. It wasn't anything coerced, nothing forced. And that's what I really would hope for. And that's what I love about Pastor Brian. I think he's always spiritually trying to push people that way, to make sure you find that sensitivity to what the Holy Spirit's up to versus just forcing something.
You know, Bobby, too, I would, like you, I would have been highly skeptical of the online sort of, matchup kind of, Christian Mingle. Christian Mingle where do they come up with that name? It's just so cheesy. But
cheesy, right? I know. Come on now.
But the point is that I want to make, I have met some amazing couples, and I've, in the course of knowing them and having conversations, I've said, so how did you guys meet? Oh, we met on Christian Mingle. I'm just like, how does this happen? So God even uses those kinds of things,
Yeah.
21st century technology. Amazing. Agosa, thank you so much for your phone call today. And hope you find the right one, or just make sure it's the right one. But seek the Lord first. That's more important. All right. Today's program is pre-recorded, so don't call in with your questions, but we do have some calls up here. Next, we're going to go to Darlene in California. You are on with Brian Broderson and Bobby Conway. Hello.
Hi, pastors. I love your show. Thank you so much for your ministry. I've been listening for at least 10 years. And
Oh, wow.
It's been very
Nice.
instrumental in my Christian walk.
Well, thanks for calling us
you.
finally.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I called before in the past, but
Okay, good.
it's been a while.
Twice in 10 years? That's, come on. You got to up that game here.
So my question is, originally I asked one question, but I kind of have a two-in-one question. Do you believe that the vaccine coercion, and in some cases the mandate for the vaccine, are setting the stage for the mark of the beast?
We did kind of
And then
talk
the
about that
second
on
part.
Thursday's first hour, but
Yes.
Yeah, I don't.
And can I ask
I don't.
my
I don't
second part? I'm sorry.
think that. We said this previously, but as time goes on with most governments, they drift toward control. That's kind of the nature of the beast. Nature of the beast. Not the mark of the beast, but the nature of the beast. I think we really need to be careful. I just finished reading a book. It's basically a Christian history book, and it is astounding how many times in history Christians have thought that it's the end of the world. Jesus is coming. Everything around us, it makes that crystal clear that this is going to happen any day. And inevitably, they do all kinds of things that end up being kind of nutty. And guess what? Jesus didn't come. So I think we need to be careful. Now, I believe Jesus will come again. And I do believe that there are signs that we can look to that will indicate that. But I think we just have to be careful reading. We have to guard against reading every event, reading into every event some sort of end times connection. And so this is a pandemic. We have had these things in the past. They've been much more severe in many cases than this one is, but nevertheless, this is a worldwide experience, as you know, for everybody. These things happen in history. Jesus said they would happen all throughout history, and they have happened throughout history. So this is another one of them. Like I said, I think a lot of times government will use any kind of a crisis to try to get more control over people. That's just what governments do. But I don't personally think that this is necessarily that.
what is the name of that book you read? That sounds really interesting.
The book is called Dominion.
Oh, that one.
And the
Tom
book
Holland?
is by Tom Holland.
Okay,
Yes.
yes.
And it is a great book. It is a very long book, but it
is long.
a good book. And Bobby, you read it too, right? And it's, it's astounding to see I mean, one of the things that struck me as I was reading through it is just like history repeating itself over and over and over and over again. Yeah. And here we are in another cycle. And, the Lord could be coming soon. I hope he is, but I don't know. Again, we are so subjective with our perspective on these things. And I think this is a particularly an American evangelical problem. Whenever anything gets uncomfortable, we automatically conclude Jesus must be coming any day because my life is getting uncomfortable. We never stop to think that most people on the planet have been living uncomfortable would be like a generous word, right?
Yeah.
They've been living way beyond discomfort for a long time. And we're not looking over there saying, "Oh, look at the way those people in Afghanistan are being treated," or "Look at those all of this stuff." We tend to be very subjective, and we tend to be a very, what's the word?
American-centric.
American-centric, yeah.
America.
Yeah, but I was thinking of the other more technical word. Where you're. What's the word? Where you're
self-centered,
Yeah, but it's more of a technical word. It's the word where you're more focused on just you and your
narcissistic.
Okay, I'll figure out the word 10 minutes from now, and I'll tell you what it was.
But Lord, we just ask that your hand would be upon Brian and be with him. And
oh, it's like on the tip of my brain, man. Come on.
Thanks for sharing, Brian. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway. Darlene, sorry we got off on that rabbit trail there, but
and Darlene did have another question, but I just want to let everybody know that book that Brian was talking about, again, it's by Tom Holland. It's called Dominion, and it is a long book. I saw that it had 434, and I'm like, 434, that's not bad. No, that's how many reviews it has on Amazon. It's actually like a 624-page book.
Yeah,
so, which is like twice the size of my Bible.
Tom Holland is not writing as a Christian. He is not a Christian.
Right.
Right. It seems to me like he's in a process of perhaps becoming a Christian, but he's not writing as a Christian. He's writing as a historian of the ancient world, which he is. He's written several books. And this is his most profound book because after writing several books on ancient history, he decided to write on Christianity, and in the process he realized that the world and all the good things in it are not due to the Greek philosophers. They're not due to the Enlightenment. They're not due to any of the things that they're normally attributed to. They are due to the influence of Jesus Christ and the gospel on the world.
Yeah. Darlene, does that help you with the first part of your question?
It does. It helps me to kind of reset my perspective and, step back and rethink again. So second part would be, so for those that are left behind after the rapture, when they're faced with the decision to receive the mark in order to be able to function in society, it wouldn't be a good thing if they adopted the attitude of some today that are taking the vaccine in order to just make things easier to avoid the battle with the government.
Well, that's one. That's one government mandate you cannot comply with. So there's no complying with the mark of the beast. That is, that is to, according to Scripture, that is basically to sell yourself, to give yourself over to the authority of Satan completely. And so, you will have to resist that. Those who are living during that period of time, they will have to resist that. They will have to resist the government mandate to receive the mark. And it will be a government mandate. It'll be a worldwide mandate.
Darlene, thanks for calling us today on Pastor's Perspective for the second time in 10 years.
Yes. Xenophobic.
Yes, of course.
Xenophobic was the word I was looking for.
How did we not? Yeah. You hear that word all the time.
How come you didn't help me with it?
Yes.
Sorry. We failed you, Brian.
It's okay. I told you that it would come to me, and it did.
Oh, venerable one, we have failed thee. This is Pastor's Perspective. Brian Broderson and Bobby Conway answering your questions. Do we have time for another call? I think we do. Here is Marin in California. Hello.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
Yes. It's not about the Bible here. Well, I'm a believer and I go to Calvary Chapel. I haven't been going for about a year, but because of the COVID. But problem is with someone that has paranoia, and I don't know where to go to get some help. I haven't been able to get any help over the years, and here I am, still the same thing.
Is this a family member, Martin?
The paranoia. Excuse me?
Is this a family member?
Yes.
Okay. Bobby, what would you suggest?
Paranoia is an awful experience for somebody to have that and to have to live that way. And I think that getting to what's causing the paranoia is important. I know in my own life, when I would have bad trips on LSD, I experienced horrific paranoia. It was real. And I can't imagine what it would be like to live that way as a lifestyle. So I think that sometimes we have to ask, what is triggering it? There are people that have had bad acid trips and literally stay in a state of paranoia, like they don't come out of it, which would just be awful. There are people that have other mental things that are taking place that can cause some paranoia, be it from bipolar, or it can be some schizophrenia stuff, early stages of paranoid schizophrenia. And so I would also say it can be anxiety induced. It can be guilt induced. People could get paranoid as it relates to guilt. I mean, Edgar Allan Poe's Telltale Heart. I mean, the guy got paranoid when he thought he wouldn't, and that's what can happen. Finding out what the cause is, and I would say advise this person to go and speak with a Christian counselor that can ask a lot of probing questions to try to determine the nature of the type of paranoia. Because if it's sin-induced, then okay, well, we can confess it and find healing. If it's spiritual warfare induced, then we can learn how to do spiritual warfare in battle. If it's schizophrenia, well, we might need some medication to help with this. If it's drug induced, well, we're going to stay off the drugs. So all that to say, you can't know what the solution is until you know what the cause is.
Brian, how would you counsel somebody biblically that's got paranoia? There's probably not a one-size-fits-all answer, right?
No, because there's varying degrees of these things, and some people, some people's paranoia, I mean, they function with it. They just kind of walk around feeling like the FBI's tracking them, or in some more severe cases, that somebody's put a chip in their head and reading their mind and things like that. Others are go into a psychotic kind of a state, and they need to be hospitalized in some cases. They need to be medicated.
That's true.
But I think everyone with a true paranoia that's rooted more in a mental illness than a spiritual kind of a thing, because you can have at times, I think, spiritual warfare and even, like Bobby said, sin that could create that sort of a experience. But if it's not that, if it is something physiological, if it's something, sometimes in many cases, mental illness is hereditary. So you might have this as a history in your family and then it shows up. You need to be under a doctor's care. You need to be seeing a psychiatrist and getting the proper medication. And, there are other things, diet and so forth, that you can. But like Bobby said, man, it's a horrific thing to live like that. And we need, those of us who don't struggle with those things, we need to be very sensitive to those who do and compassionate toward them.
Yeah. Martin, thank you for calling us today with your question here on the Pastor's Perspective program. Would you pray for him and his family?
Yes, Lord, we do pray for Martin, and what a difficult thing. And so we ask you to help him, Lord, as he's calling, asking for help and really asking for wisdom. Lord, you said if anyone lacks wisdom, to ask you who gives to all freely. So would you give him wisdom on how to help this family member with this malady that they are suffering with. We ask you to intervene in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All right, we'll be back with more of your questions here on the Pastor's Perspective program. We're not live today, so don't call us, but we will get to the calls that are on the screen right now, time permitting. So give us a couple of minutes. We'll be back with you here on Pastor's Perspective with Brian Broderson and Bobby Conway. Welcome back to Pastor's Perspective. We are not live in the studio today. We are alive, but not live. So don't call us with your questions. Save them for tomorrow when we will be back on the phones answering them. But we do have some calls on the board right now that we're going to try to get to, as many of them as we can between now and the end of the hour. Answering your questions today are Pastor Brian Broderson from Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa in Southern California, and author and apologist Dr. Bobby Conway from the 1 Minute Apologist channel on YouTube, and the pastor of Image Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. You guys ready to talk to some more folk?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
I'm still awake, so let's.
You're still awake,
yeah. My jet lag has not overtaken
While we have
me
them
yet.
awake, let us get to more calls. Here is Teresa in California. You are on the program, Teresa. Hi.
Hello. Actually, it's Teresa with the essays. And thank you so much for taking my call.
Teresa. Okay, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Yes, no problem. I just discovered your platform a few weeks ago.
Really?
By accident, I had to leave work early, and I caught the end of it. And I was just so grateful. I really appreciate the discussions, and I think it's great what you're doing.
So are you listening on radio?
Yes, I've been on the radio, and I got in my car because I listened to the station for the messages, but I had never heard of Pastor's Perspective until a few weeks ago.
Well, you know, we archive all of our programs on Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify. You've got 20 years worth of binge watching or binge listening to do by the end of the month. We'll give you till the end of the month to listen. No, I'm joking. How can we help you today?
Yeah, no, I discovered that, and I have been, trust me.
Oh, okay.
I've been listening to trying to keep up. My question is regarding, I was doing a Bible study on Revelations chapter 13, and my question is regarding verse 18, where it says, let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast. It is the number of a man. And I think some versions say calculate the number. My question is, how do you calculate or determine that number? I don't know if you're converting the Hebrew number letters to numbers, or what's the formula to actually calculate that number for those that have understanding.
Well, Bobby, tell her about the fact that there's a numerical equivalent to the Greek letters. But then I think the question goes a little bit beyond that too.
Yeah. Well, there's something known as gematria. And so that is kind of where you end up running these numbers together as it corresponds to letters. And so then people will try to, decipher, well, what does this mean? And so as it relates to 666 throughout church history, what is the number of the beast? The question is, was this like Nero? Because if you take Nero's name and you calculate his name, and so in the Hebrew alphabet, in the Greek alphabet, and the English alphabet, we don't have the same amount of letters. And so it's interesting, like the way that the God's people, the Hebrews even in particular, you see it like in the book of Psalms. So for example, Psalm 119, it has all these verses, but it goes through the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, and starting with Aleph, and it goes all the way through. Verse 1 is the Aleph, and verse 2 is the Beit, and it goes through the end of the alphabet, and then starting all over again. It does that, and it's a mnemonic device. So that's one way that it's used. Now, as it relates to this mark of the beast in calculating it, you're looking for that correspondence between number and letter. And some have said that Nero's name would correspond to 666. So they'll say he was the particular antichrist that's being talked about. You'll have others that will say, oh, it was a pope. So you get people speculating. You have people in America saying, oh, it was Barack Obama. The question is then you'll have some that will say, well, it was somebody from the past like Nero, but then there's also this future fulfillment that you'll see in the tribulation. So you'll have some that will say it's just future. You'll have some that will say it's just preterist, just past. And then you'll have some that will say, oh, it represented maybe Nero and then also somebody in the future. And I kind of like that as well, this already / not yet fulfillment.
I remember hearing that it was Ronald Wilson Reagan because he had 6 letters in each of his names.
Henry Kissinger was a big candidate at one point, back in the 70s. But I think I think as you read the text, we tend to read it from where we're sitting and think of the fulfillment of it from where we're sitting. I think we need to understand we don't know who that person is, and it's futile to try to figure it out. But there will be a generation, there will be people to whom it will not be futile. They will be able to figure it out when the time comes. We can't figure it out because the time hasn't come. Mm-hmm. And so all of the attempts, like we just mentioned, Ronald Wilson Reagan, all of these attempts, and there have been dozens of these, to, predict who this beast is by the mark of the beast, have all failed and will continue to fail until the actual event is here. And then I think when the event is here, the people will go, oh, this is the number of a man whose number is 666. We get it.
Yeah. Sharisa, what do you think?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I was studying Hebrew, so I was familiar with, converting the letters to numbers. And I read all the theories on Nero, and there's a lot of, different theories out there. Yeah. So I just kind of was looking for a concise answer. But it sounds like when it says, let him who understands, that just hasn't been revealed to us yet. Yes. So we may not be capable of having that level of understanding until that time comes.
Yeah, I think that's the answer.
Well, thanks for your phone call today on the Pastor's Perspective program. Bobby, did you want to add something? It looks like you wanted to, or did I read you wrong?
Well, no. I think that the big thing is it's a form of numerology, this gematria that the Jewish people would use. And so it's hard for us to even picture it, but basically you would take the first 10 letters, okay, and those are given number values that increase consecutively from 1 to 10. And then, like, if you were to go in and take the next 8 letters, then they're given values that, increase up to 10 from 20 to 90. And so it kind of goes that way. And then they just do this math. So like, for example, if you take the final 4 letters then you give them number values and they increase as well by a factor from 100 to 400. So these numbers increase, they build. And so you're looking for that correspondence to build out the math. And it's nothing that we're really used to doing. At least I'm not used to doing here in America with our English language. So it's fascinating, but it just lets us know how thoughtful. I also just love, this was an oral culture, and we forget about that sometimes too. And in an oral culture, they were doing a lot of things to help them to remember. And this is known as mnemonic device. And so they would have things that would help them to be able to remember things as well.
All right. Sal in California, you are next on Pastor's Perspective. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes, Pastor. I'm calling because I had this thing in my mind about the whole COVID vaccine and everything, and it's just a thing that it made me think about being brave and not having fear against what they tell us to do. Like, you have to take the vaccine, you have to do this, you have to do that, or else you're not going to be able to shop around, or else you're not going to be able to travel, et cetera, et cetera. So us I was thinking about it. Why not stand up to the government and use our freedom of speech, our freedom, that they, this the U.S. was built on, that whole freedom, having the right to be a free man. Why not use our rights that while we still have them?
Okay. Brian, what would you say?
Well, Sal, I think there's more that we need to think about with this COVID situation. This is a legitimate virus. It is, in some cases, deadly. Nobody really knows who's going to die from it versus who is going to just have a runny nose. There's all kinds of unknowns about it. How it's spread, nobody even really knows how it's spread. One person in a family gets it. You would assume that everybody's going to get it because it's supposed to be highly contagious, and then nobody else gets it except that one person. So there's so many variables. There's so many unknowns about it. But here's the thing that we have to think about. I think we have to think about what is the best way to care for the people around us. I think myself that we should be more sensitive to the fact that people are vulnerable, that people could be infected and die from this. I think we should think about that first rather than, well, I don't like a mask. I don't want to get a vaccine. I'm not going to let anybody tell me that I can't do this or that because I'm an American. I don't think that that's really what we should be doing here. Now, that's my opinion. A lot of people disagree with me on that. But I think that now there is a time and place and issues over which standing up for our rights in the way that you're talking about, I think is right and it's appropriate and it needs to be done. I just don't know that this is the time or that this is the issue over which we should be doing this. I think it's way more complicated than that. Again, this is a real disease. This isn't like made up. It's not a government conspiracy. It's not fake. It's real. And it is deadly for numbers of people.
Yeah.
So,
Sal, thanks for your question. Looks like we have a similar one from Yolanda here. Welcome to the program, Yolanda.
Hello, hi. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. If we couldn't hear you, we'd let you know.
Okay, yes, hello. Thank you for taking my call. I just heard what your response was. That's kind of exactly what I was calling for.
Yes.
My question was that I was I heard Summer's question earlier and what she was talking about, and this gentleman that just phoned, they're upset about everything because they have to wear masks, the vaccine is mandated, and that's where I was going with. I have trouble understanding everybody complaining because I think about, especially the people, us as Christians, would not God want us to do for ourselves, to keep ourselves safe, to keep our families safe, to keep people safe so people do not lose their lives?
Mm-hmm.
And that, I just heard your response, and that's, I don't understand. We're people who are Christian followers. I understand there's a lot of Christian followers who are in the also believing, are more for their rights, and they don't want to. They feel that their rights are being taken away because they have to wear masks.
Right. I think the main thing is that a lot of Christians are saying, and not just Christians, but because the thing is not fully FDA approved, that's why they're afraid to get the vaccine. Bobby, I think you talked about this on the Thursday program. What did you want to say to Yolanda?
Yeah, I mean, this is challenging, and one of the things that I hate is how much COVID has exposed some division in our country. Unfortunately, it's really challenging. I mean, I'm the guy. Like a lot of times, I can see different sides of things, and I can look at this, and this is where I would wish that people could just have, their conscience respected because the FDA hasn't approved it. But for me, I took the approach becoming all things to all people. I thought, you know what? So my posture is this: like, I will say I don't agree with if people are doing stuff out of coercion. I do think that if people have had COVID like myself, there's natural antibodies that are put in place. And I wish that there could be some room for those kind of people who have had COVID. And they keep talking about all these follow-up COVID shots, and it just seems like it's going to be never ending. And I get it. Like, it's a good goal. We should want to see this eradicated. At the same token, I wish that there was a way for this to be eradicated and it didn't have to divide our country up so much. I don't think everybody's trying to power grab. I think some people are trying to power grab. And I don't think everybody that's resisting getting the vaccine is doing it because they're against government. I think they just are worried about their body. And so there's just a lot that goes into this. And that's why, for me, I want to be able to respect different people and the conclusions that they come to. But I know for me as a pastor, I feel like because I've got the vaccine, I can say, look, I got it because I want to become all things to all people. And if you're worried about it, I got it. But at the same token, I didn't like how pushed I felt into getting it, but I got it. So I feel like I can challenge both sides as one who had it and as one who got the vaccine. But everybody is different. It's not like I've got the magic conscience here. I mean, we're all just trying to do the best we can with our given context. I'll tell you, I go back and forth on these news feeds, and it's just shocking to me how different the narrative is at times. And it's no wonder that we are absolutely divided as a country. Sometimes I can listen to people or watch people and go, okay, I can tell even on probably political stances where people are at, just because of how crystallized this conversation has become around this. And that's why I don't want to be like Fox News or MSNBC. I don't want to be put in a political, liberal or conservative box. I want to think biblically and go back and forth. And that's what I respect about Pastor Brian as well. I know he pays attention to both sides, and I know he listens to both sides. And sometimes people on one side want us to take a certain side, and that creates frustration as well because we don't come down where they want us to.
I think, this has been... I think anybody who's paid any attention to this knows that this has been a colossal nightmare from the standpoint of communication, from the standpoint of, who's telling the truth about the vaccine. I mean, it is such a mixed bag. And I agree with you 100%, Bobby. And I'm not trying to convince people to get the vaccine necessarily. If they have a conviction that they don't want to get it, I got it months ago. If they have a conviction they don't want to get it, that's their own conviction. I think when we polarize over it, that's where it becomes a problem.
Yep.
And I do think that when we make it something bigger than the virus itself, and we start reading into it conspiracy theories, and we start reading into it government takeover and all of that, I think that's where we're getting off track. Now, does that mean that there's not been government overreach? No, I think that there's been plenty of government overreach. But I think that, like I've said earlier, there are some people in the government who that is just the way they think government ought to operate. That is their philosophy. The government is supposed to take over everything. Government is supposed to be in charge. Government is supposed to make sure that everybody is taken care of, and people don't know what to do, so we got to tell them what to do. I completely disagree with that philosophy, but there's a lot of politicians out there that think that way, and that's why they act the way they do. But man, this has been, and this isn't just America. I mean, this is all over the world. There is confusion in every single country about COVID and how to deal with it, how to navigate it. So I just, again, my conviction is that if we just keep landing back on my rights, I think we're missing something there. There is a place where Christians are not to be. That's not our primary concern, our rights. Our primary concern is what would Jesus have us to do, and doing what he wants us to do.
Yeah. Bobby, any thoughts?
I think my final thoughts would just be to try to give each other the benefit of the doubt, regardless of which side one is on. Again, that's that tolerance that can be where we respect each other as human beings. Look, I mean, there's one hill that Jesus died on, Golgotha. It was the gospel, and I think that that's something that you can't really skirt around that. But when it comes to something like a vaccine, you'll have some people that will say, "Oh, that you're so selfish if you don't get vaccinated. How could you possibly not get vaccinated?" Well, try to understand. Maybe the person's not trying to be selfish. Maybe they really genuinely do care about other people. Maybe they fear that because it's not FDA approved, and they're hearing about some of these side effects, that they feel like that this is not safe, and we're being fed something here. So don't just assume selfishness, or they don't have a sense of altruism. There's plenty of people that would willingly jump up and get the vaccine in a moment if it was FDA approved. So I would say we need to give that benefit of the doubt. And then on the other side, don't just assume because somebody went ahead and got vaccinated that they are excited about the government controlling us. Or if somebody's like, if they're wearing a mask, I do tend to see if somebody's driving around with the mask in a car by themselves. Or when I was in California last week, I went to a gym and a guy was just killing himself on the treadmill. Nobody was even in sight of him with his mask on. It was hard for me to think, oh, this guy probably wants government controlling him. So... but those are judgments. And so we have to always remember to step back and give some benefit of the doubt, while that's hard for me to do when somebody's running on a treadmill with nobody around with a mask on.
Well, what's crazy is I was out today. I was down at the beach, and, the beach, there's plenty of fresh air at the beach. And I was shocked at the number of people that were wearing masks.
While they were swimming in the ocean.
Well, not quite, but
okay.
But I did think that, and it didn't look like they were trying to make a political statement or anything like that. I genuinely thought, wow, these people are afraid. That's why they're wearing these masks.
That's what I think.
Because it doesn't make any sense why you're wearing it, other than you're just wearing it out of fear. And so, So that's a real thing. People are fearful, and so, but God's been using that to get them to think about their mortality. And that's been one of the things that is, triggering people to kind of move in the direction of Jesus. So that's the good thing.
Yes, it is. Yolanda, thanks for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. Let's go to Alan in California. How are you, Alan?
Hi, I'm good. I just had a quick question. Is there any way like God can forgive you for a certain sin that you've committed? Like is there a point that you can get that God's just tired of you that He can't forgive you anymore?
Why do you want to know, Alan? Why do you specifically ask this question?
Because I kind of feel like I've gotten to that point.
Really? Brian?
Yeah.
Well, Alan, I think that I understand that you could feel that way, but I don't think that God feels that way about you. I think the devil, who's real, would love you to think that, so you wouldn't even bother to try to approach God, because after all, you've just sinned so much. He's finished with you. That's very common. Satan does that regularly. The Bible says that God's mercies are new every morning. And so the moment you turn to God and say, I've sinned, Lord, forgive me, it doesn't matter how many times you've sinned, He forgives you. Remember, Jesus told a parable and or a story. He said, he was talking about forgiveness, and Peter, one of the apostles, he said, well, how often should I forgive? Should I forgive 7 times? And Jesus said, no, Peter, actually you should forgive 70 times 7. And Peter's like, what? That sounds crazy. Jesus was not saying you can forgive, 490 times. He's making it like, no, forgiveness needs to be continue. Now, He's telling us what to do. But remember, God is the great forgiver. God is the one who forgives. And if we're expected to forgive 70 times 7, then we can expect that God will forgive us as often as we come to Him and ask for forgiveness. But also, God wants us to turn from the things that we are asking for forgiveness for. So it's not just, okay, I keep doing the same sins over again. I go back to God, okay, forgive me, and then I run right back out and do the same thing. He will still forgive you, but He wants to deliver you from those things because they are destructive. They're harmful. They're making your life far less than what God intends it to be. So know that Jesus put it this way. He said, whoever comes to me, I will never turn them away. So when you come to Jesus and you ask Him to forgive you, know that He forgives you. But know that He also wants you to follow Him, and He wants to lead you out of that behavior as well.
Yeah. Alan, thanks for calling us today. And you guys can read more about forgiveness and what it means to have a new life with God. Go to calvarychapel.com, click the banner, or click the tab, I should say, that says How to Know God. Read through that. Contact us there at the bottom of the page. We would love to hear from you. That's all the time we have on today's program. We will be back live tomorrow because we were not live today, but we'll get to many of your questions. If we didn't get to yours today, call us back tomorrow. For Brian Broderson and Bobby Conway, I'm Brian Perez. Pastor's Perspective is sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa.